In the heart of New York City stands Benedict Church, once a symbol of faith and spirituality. However, recent shocking revelations have turned it into a center of controversy. Disturbing reports suggest that this place of worship was hiding a dark and sinful secret, one that has left many in disbelief. The church, which was once revered by the Christian community, has now become the subject of a major scandal that shook the entire city. The truth came to light when a young woman, a member of the church herself, exposed what was happening behind its sacred walls. This woman, who was not just any visitor but a Christian priest, revealed horrifying details about the misconduct taking place. Despite her claims, the police officers were initially reluctant to believe her. How could such acts of indecency take place in a house of God? How could respected members of the church be involved in such immoral activities? The officers, all of whom were also of Christian faith, struggled to accept the shocking allegations. However, as more details emerged, the authorities had no choice but to take action. Investigations led to the immediate closure of the church and the shocking arrest of 10 nuns and 5 priests. The revelation sent shockwaves throughout the city, leaving people questioning how such acts remained hidden for so long. What exactly happened inside Benedict Church? What led to the involvement of priests and nuns in such a scandal? As the story unfolds, we will reveal all the shocking details. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into this dark mystery, uncovering the truth that the world was never meant to see. It was an ordinary day at the New York Police Department when suddenly an 18-year-old girl barged in, visibly shaken and in distress. She was barefoot, her clothes torn, her face bruised with scratches, and tears streaming down her cheeks. Struggling to catch her breath, she cried out, desperate for help. The officers inside the station stopped in their tracks, their attention immediately drawn to the terrified young woman standing before them. With trembling lips, she made a shocking claim. The priests inside Benedict Church are not men of God. They trade in innocence. They try to take my dignity. Her voice, filled with fear and desperation, echoed through the room. The officers exchanged skeptical glances. This was one of the most prestigious churches in the city, a sacred place where thousands came to pray. Could such a horrifying crime really be happening behind its walls? One officer stepped forward, his expression filled with doubt. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. The girl, still sobbing, nodded vigorously. "I worked there for a week. I saw everything with my own eyes. The priests, the nuns, they are not who they pretend to be." The room fell silent. She then recounted the horrors she had endured. According to her, she had been assigned to work at the church, fulfilling her duties like any other new member. But soon she began to notice strange activities, whispers in the hallways, locked doors in forbidden areas, and secret gatherings after dark. The girl claimed that on the previous night, the priests tried to force themselves on her. She fought back with all her strength, managing to escape. Now she was here, risking everything to tell the truth. Despite her heart-wrenching testimony, the officers remained hesitant. How could such a terrible crime go unnoticed in one of the city's most well-known places of worship? What if she was lying? What if this was an attempt to defame the church? But as the girl continued to speak, her tears and fear were undeniable evidence of her trauma. The officers now faced a difficult decision. Should they ignore her cries for help or investigate one of the most sacred places in the city? What would they uncover if they dared to look deeper? Stay tuned as the mystery unfolds. The truth hidden inside Benedict Church is darker than anyone could have ever imagined. Despite the young woman's distressing account, the police officers remained unconvinced. Could such horrific crimes truly be happening inside Benedict Church, one of the most well-respected religious institutions in New York? The allegations were too severe, and if proven false, they could cause unnecessary chaos. But what if she was telling the truth? The officers knew that launching an immediate raid on the church could spark outrage. The Christian community might see it as an attack on their faith, leading to protests and backlash. No one wanted to put their jobs or their safety on the line without concrete evidence. What if this was a misunderstanding? What if the girl was lying? One officer, clearly doubtful, crossed his arms and stared at her. "Do you understand what you're saying? You're accusing the very people who dedicate their lives to God." The girl, her eyes filled with desperation, responded, "I know it's hard to believe, but I swear I'm telling the truth. I saw it. I was almost a victim myself." Still, there was hesitation in the room. Some officers whispered among themselves, considering their options. They knew that if they launched an investigation without proof, their actions could have serious consequences. But at the same time, if they ignored her claims and she was telling the truth, more innocent lives could be at risk. After a long silence, the lead officer took a deep breath and finally spoke. "We will investigate, but if you're lying, you will face the consequences." The girl wiped her tears, her voice unwavering. "If I'm lying, I accept any punishment. But please, just look for the truth." And so the decision was made. The police were about to uncover a reality far more sinister than they had ever imagined. With suspicion still looming over the young woman's claims, the New York Police Department had to make a careful move. A direct raid on Benedict Church could lead to public outrage, but ignoring the allegations could allow a horrific crime to continue in secret. The officers needed a way to investigate without drawing attention. That's when they turned to Michael, a highly experienced officer known for his expertise in undercover operations. Michael had cracked several high-profile cases before, infiltrating dangerous networks and uncovering hidden crimes. Now he was given a new mission: to enter Benedict Church in disguise and find out the truth. The plan was simple. He would pose as a priest in training, gaining the trust of those inside and observing everything happening behind the sacred walls. Before stepping into his role, the department ran a background check on the young woman who had come forward with the allegations. What they found only added to the mystery. She came from a poor background, with no criminal record or history of making false accusations. If she was lying, what did she have to gain? Michael prepared himself for the mission. Dressed as a humble priest, he walked into Benedict Church, claiming he wanted to dedicate his life to faith and learn under the guidance of the clergy. His calm demeanor and deep knowledge of religious teachings made him a perfect candidate, and the church accepted him without hesitation. Once inside, Michael began observing the environment. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Priests conducting prayers, nuns engaged in their daily routines, and visitors coming for confession. But he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was being hidden. At night, Michael kept a watchful eye on the restricted areas of the church. The young woman had claimed that dark deeds took place after sunset, but so far he had seen nothing unusual. He started interacting with the priests and nuns, carefully asking questions without drawing suspicion. As the days passed, Michael realized that uncovering the truth would not be easy. If the allegations were true, the real culprits were experts at hiding their tracks. He needed to dig deeper, get closer, and catch them in the act. As Michael continued his undercover investigation inside Benedict Church, he slowly started noticing strange behavior among the clergy. The priests and nuns acted normal during the day, carrying out their religious duties, but at night their actions became suspicious. Certain areas of the church were off-limits, secret meetings took place, and whispers of forbidden activities could be heard in hushed conversations. One evening, Michael overheard a disturbing conversation between two priests. They spoke in low voices about a young woman who had escaped and how they needed to be more careful. This was a chilling confirmation. The girl had not been lying. Michael's suspicions deepened when a new young woman arrived at the church. She was welcomed with open arms, but something about the way she was treated felt wrong. He watched as the priests and nuns subtly tried to manipulate and influence her, encouraging her to let go of worldly restraints and participate in spiritual cleansing rituals. It didn't take long before she realized the truth. This was not a place of worship, but a place where innocence was being exploited. The young woman resisted their advances, but they would not take no for an answer. She was pressured, cornered, and finally, an attempt was made to force her into submission. However, before anything could happen, she managed to escape just like the first girl who had come forward. Meanwhile, Michael knew he had seen enough. It was time to reveal the truth and take action. But he needed undeniable proof to expose the sinful acts taking place behind these holy walls. One night, as Michael continued his undercover surveillance, something finally happened that would confirm all suspicions. It was late in the evening when strange noises echoed from a private residential quarter inside the church, a restricted area where only priests and nuns were allowed. The voices were hushed but filled with laughter and whispers, something that seemed out of place in a religious institution. Michael cautiously made his way toward the source of the noise, hiding in the shadows. As he peeked through a half-open door, his worst fears were confirmed. Inside, 10 nuns and 5 priests were engaged in acts that had nothing to do with faith or worship. They were completely intoxicated, laughing, and committing acts that no religious figure should ever be involved in. Without wasting a second, Michael sent a secret signal to his fellow officers waiting outside. The police stormed the church, catching the priests and nuns in the act. Their faces turned pale with shock as they realized they had been exposed. Some tried to resist, while others, too intoxicated to react, collapsed in shame and fear. The entire neighborhood woke up to the commotion, with people rushing to the scene, trying to make sense of the chaos. The once holy Benedict Church was now at the center of a scandal that would shake the entire city. The arrested individuals were dragged out of the church and taken into police custody. As the news broke, people were left in disbelief. How could trusted spiritual leaders betray their followers like this? How long had this been happening? And more importantly, who else was involved? The case was now headed for trial, but something still didn't add up. The arrested priests and nuns were in a dazed state, as if they were unaware of what had been happening. Had they been drugged? Were they victims too? The deeper the investigation went, the darker the truth became. But one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. As the case reached the courtroom, the media frenzy surrounding Benedict Church intensified. People demanded justice, and the arrested priests and nuns were now at the center of a scandal that had shaken the faith of thousands. But as the investigation unfolded, shocking new details emerged, details that no one had expected. During the hearings, the 10 nuns and 5 priests broke down in tears, claiming they had no memory of the events that took place that night. They insisted they were innocent. One of the nuns, trembling in fear, stated, "We don't know what happened. The last thing we remember was drinking a special herbal tea given to us before bed. Then we woke up in jail." This revelation stunned the courtroom. Could it be possible that they had been drugged and framed? The focus of the investigation shifted to the church staff, particularly a woman responsible for serving food and drinks to the clergy. When questioned, she appeared equally confused. "I was only doing what I was told. Every night I was given a special drink to serve to the priests and nuns before they went to sleep. I never questioned it," she testified. With this new information, the case took an unexpected turn. If the priests and nuns were drugged, then who was the real mastermind behind this entire operation? Was this part of a larger conspiracy hidden deep within the church? As the courtroom fell into silence, one thing became clear. This was far bigger than anyone had imagined. The real culprits were still out there, hiding in the shadows, but not for long. As the investigation dug deeper, it became clear that the 10 nuns and 5 priests were not the true criminals. They were victims of a larger conspiracy. Someone had orchestrated the entire scandal, drugging them and using them as scapegoats to hide their own crimes. But who was behind it all? As pressure mounted, new witnesses came forward, revealing chilling details that had been buried in silence. Church staff members, former workers, and even local community members spoke about strange activities that had been happening for years. Many were afraid to speak out, fearing for their lives. Finally, one witness who had worked inside Benedict Church for years could no longer keep the truth hidden. With a shaking voice, he testified in court. This was all planned. The real criminals are powerful people who control everything from behind the scenes. They made sure that innocent people took the blame while they continued their crimes without suspicion. The revelations shocked the courtroom. The real masterminds had gone to extreme lengths to cover their tracks, using the church as a front for their illegal activities. They drugged the priests and nuns, staged the whole incident, and ensured that when the police arrived, the innocent ones were caught while they remained hidden. The police intensified their search, tracing the source of the drugged drinks and investigating financial records, surveillance footage, and secret church files. Slowly, the real picture began to emerge. The true criminals were not just individuals within the church. They were part of a well-organized network. And then the final piece of the puzzle fell into place: the involvement of a senior priest who had never once appeared in court since the scandal broke out. It was time to unmask the real villain behind the darkest secret of Benedict Church. Justice was closing in. As the investigation reached its final stages, all clues pointed toward one man, Benedict Church's senior priest. Unlike the others, he had remained silent and distant, never once appearing in court or addressing the allegations. While the arrested priests and nuns pleaded their innocence, this priest kept himself hidden, avoiding any public scrutiny. When the police dug into his past, they discovered a shocking connection. This so-called holy man was linked to a powerful criminal gang that operated in human trafficking and illicit activities. Even more disturbing, his own brother was one of the key figures in the gang. For years, they had used Benedict Church as a front for their crimes. The priest had devised a sinister plan. He ensured that young women entering the church were drugged and manipulated, while secretly recording them to create blackmail material for the gang. These recordings were then sold to high-profile clients, making the church not just a place of worship, but a hub for corruption and exploitation. But how had he stayed hidden for so long? Witnesses revealed that he never personally handled anything illegal. Instead, he orchestrated everything from the shadows, using his authority to silence anyone who suspected the truth. The nuns and priests who had been arrested, they were merely pawns in his grand scheme. Now, with evidence piling up, the police had no choice but to act. The net was closing in on the true mastermind of the Benedict Church scandal. But would he finally face justice, or did he have one last trick up his sleeve? With overwhelming evidence against him, the senior priest of Benedict Church could no longer hide. The police launched a high-profile operation to capture him before he could escape. Officers spread across the city, tracking his last known locations, monitoring his phone activity, and interviewing those who had once worked closely with him. Then, after 48 hours of intense pursuit, they found him, hiding in a secluded safe house, attempting to flee the country. The moment he was arrested, panic spread among his accomplices, who were also rounded up in simultaneous raids across multiple states. In court, the truth was finally laid bare. This so-called holy man had been leading a double life, preaching about faith and morality, while secretly running a criminal network that exploited innocent lives. He had been responsible for drugging the nuns and priests, orchestrating their arrests to shift suspicion away from himself. His brother's gang, operating in the background, had been silencing anyone who came too close to exposing the truth. The judge did not hesitate. The senior priest was sentenced to life in prison, along with his criminal associates. The trafficking ring was dismantled, and the innocent priests and nuns who had been framed were released, their names cleared of all wrongdoing. But the damage had already been done. The scandal had left a deep scar on the religious community, shaking the faith of many who once trusted Benedict Church. However, in an effort to restore its lost honor, the church was reopened under new leadership, with strict oversight to prevent any future corruption. As the news of the convictions spread, people breathed a sigh of relief. Justice had been served. The hidden evil within Benedict Church had finally been exposed, and those responsible were now behind bars. But this case served as a chilling reminder. Sometimes the darkest secrets hide in the most unexpected places.